I was laid off from my job in 2016 and my life took a completely different trajectory. I have been feeling a strong need to do a video about this, but finding the courage to do so has been really difficult. I have been practically running away from doing this particular video for quite some time. But with the news, the sad news about more and more people losing their jobs due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I thought to myself, well, I'll have to brave it and tell my story once again, and perhaps it can give hope to someone out there. So wish me luck. I'm gonna need it. I hope I get through this one in one piece because I am about to relive some really painful memories. So stick with me till the end. Hello everyone and welcome to another video. My name is Nicky Verd. I am the author of the best-selling book, Disrupt Yourself or Be Disrupted. If you love this content, I need something from you to help me grow. I need you to share this video on your favorite social media platform. I also need you to hit the like button and leave a comment below, and remember to subscribe if you haven't done so. And with that being said, let's get into the story of the day. I always thought that being laid off or being retrenched was something that happened to old people. Yes, I was that naive. I had an illusion of job security like many people today do. I was a permanent employee with a permanent contract of employment. And I had that contract nicely kept at home in my drawer until that fateful morning when my boss called for a meeting in his office. For me, job security is an illusion. One day you may get to work, content in the knowledge that you are safe and secured in your job. Then you get a call from your boss. He wants to see you in his office. Or you get that dreadful email. Yes. You get told the company is restructuring, or some other nicety or not so nicey, stories. And that will be the end. The contract of employment or the contract of permanent employment, it really means nothing because there's always a possibility that you will no longer have a job if maybe you don't perform well, or if something outrageous happens, or if you fall behind a certain criteria, Sometimes you may not have done anything wrong. Like in my case, your employer might just need to downsize and get rid of some staff. And because you were the last one in, you are the first one out, especially now as the COVID-19 pandemic is bringing even the toughest global job markets to its knees. Okay, back to my story. When my boss called me in to his office that fateful morning, it was nothing unusual, as that was what usually happened whenever he had been away, and then he will return to the office. And so I walked into his office suspecting nothing and sat down with this big smile on my face. He looked at me and took a deep breath that felt like he took my soul along. Immediately, I knew something was wrong. My smile started to fade as I was sitting and waiting for him to drop the bomb. He went silent for about 20 seconds or so, which felt like eternity. I could feel my heart pounding against my chest. Finally, he looked straight at me with this pale look and said, "I've been wondering how to tell you this, but there are some changes going on and we've decided to let you go." In that moment, I felt my heart dropped into my stomach. It felt as if I had just been hit by a train on high speed. This turn of event was completely unexpected and shocked me to the extent that I sat there, open-mouthed, struggling to comprehend what has just happened. His eyes stared at me intently. His inability to grasp the chaos he had just unleashed was astonishing. Yet, I couldn't speak. I was rendered speechless. My mouth was dry. I could feel my heart forcing its way out of my chest. This was a watershed moment in my life, and I knew life was never going to be the same again. I just lost the very job I held onto for dear life. My identity, my bills, my groceries, my children's future were all wrapped around that job. And it was gone in an instant. The footsteps of me walking away from an abusive marriage that nearly drove me to suicide were barely dried. It was exactly 1 year of me and my kids facing life on our own in a foreign country, and the job that gave us hope was now gone. As a single mom, I felt my world crashing into tiny little pieces. I thought I'd finished all of my own suffering and was borrowing other people's suffering. I thought divorce was the rock bottom of rock bottoms. I didn't think life could get any worse, and in that moment, it did. The job that kept me sane was gone in an instant. To say that day and the weeks and months that followed were some of the worst days of my life would be an understatement. I cried myself to sleep for months. Anxiety was the order of the day. The despair was unbearable. I was like a walking zombie. It took weeks for me to even tell my closest friend that I had been laid off. As time went on, the raging storm inside me began to subside. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, but still I made the tough decision never to return to the corporate world again. It was mostly out of fear. I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to ever feel this pain again. I don't want to ever feel this level of hopelessness and despair again. Deep down, I knew there was more to life. And I decided it was time to explore, time to pave my own path. Though I had no clue what that path was or what it looked like. Back then, I had no idea there was a writer in me. I had no idea I could do public speaking. I had no idea I could impact people or make a difference in the world. I never ever imagined that someday someone could, pay my flight and hotel accommodation or fly me to another country to speak at a conference. But God, being God, was at work behind the scenes, even though it was like I was nearly drowning in pain. After losing my job, all I knew was pain. I was in a dark place. I'd hit rock bottom once again. I cried myself to sleep for months. My pain eventually became curiosity, and I started questioning as to why retrenchment was more rampant and more vicious. When you buy, when you buy a car or a particular type of a car, then you start to see that car everywhere you go. It was like that for me because I'd experienced retrenchment. Every time I switch on the TV or listen to the radio, there was news about, people being retrenched, and sometimes in their thousands. And I was like, okay, I'm not the only one here. So I started kind of questioning how a company could afford to retrench thousands of employees in a space of, say, 2 or 3 years, sometimes even less. And yet they don't go bankrupt, yet the business, increases productivity, efficiency, and much more. So these questions led me to the belly of the internet, so to say. I started researching, and for the first time, I came across, words like artificial intelligence, robotics, Internet of Things, big data, and much more. And all of these were powered by something called the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And these concepts, initially sounded to me like a foreign language, and they were quite intimidating because prior to this, I had zero background in IT, zero interest in IT to begin with, zero interest in technology. You know, the only tech that I knew prior to being laid off was that I could work on my laptop. I could use my phone for calls or messages. You know, nothing beyond that. I had no interest in technology whatsoever. And I am not an academician by any stretch of imagination. Like, I don't even have a degree. Yes, you heard that right. Well, my cluelessness about these new technologies only fueled my curiosity even more. I wanted to know about these new emerging technologies. I wanted to understand their impact, and I just threw myself out there. And the more I studied these concepts, the more interesting it became. And I started sharing them on social media, and I realized that many people were also very interested, and many people were also just as clueless as I was, you know, completely unaware of how new technologies are changing changing work and life. And so I discovered that there are a lot of people that are just too comfortable, you know, still with this illusion of job security. Many are still holding on to the certificates that are no longer relevant. And so it became like a huge passion, so to say, for me to warn people about these changes that are happening, you know, in the world. And so I moved from writing on social media to starting a blog, and I started writing articles about stuff, about these things and much more. You know, writing gave me meaning and purpose. Writing became my therapy, and somehow I escaped the pain I was feeling through this writing, and I went on to writing for the Huffington Post and other media platforms in South Africa. And I had no idea this would turn into a book. And so my curiosity and a knack for questioning life gave birth to the book that everyone talks about now, Disrupt Yourself or Be Disrupted. And when the idea for the book came into my mind, I remember I disqualified myself immediately. I was like, get out of here. I was like, who is going to write a book? So I came up with like 1,000 valid excuses of why I could never write a book. You know, like, I'm not educated. I cannot speak proper English. I know nothing about technology or the IT industry. And so I kept telling myself I wasn't qualified. And the more I tried to run away from the idea to write the book, the more it became, you know, even stronger. And so eventually I gave in and I wrote the book. And I've learned that a certificate is not the only thing that can qualify a person. I've learned that passion to make a difference in the world can qualify you as well. Purpose can qualify you, you know. Experience can qualify you. Sometimes just having a certain personality can qualify you as well. So you should never disqualify yourself because you don't have formal education or you don't have certain certification. You know, having the courage to write a book qualified me and gave me a voice. You know, even though I don't have the qualifications according to world standards, you know what I mean? But yet I am able to speak on the topic of emerging technologies, you know, both nationally and internationally, something I never imagined could happen. But the journey that brought me on an international stage has been a painful one. A journey back from darkness, as I would say. A journey littered with teeth-shattering challenges. Because after losing my job and finding myself with no source of income, I was beyond broke. I was as broke as the 10 Commandments Moses dropped when he came down the mountain. The experience was like being thrown into the sea with no life jacket. It was either I swim or I die. I remember an amazing couple that I've been friends with for so many years. They came to my rescue and offered me a room in their house to move in with my kids. But I said no to their offer. The reason I said no to this brilliant offer deserves its own video, and I'll probably do a video on that someday. And also friends and family suggested I send my kids back home and try to bounce back on my feet. And I also said no, because I couldn't imagine, I couldn't bear the thought of them being so far from me. You know, they were still making sense of me and their dad not being together, and I couldn't put them through another trauma of separating them from me. They were just too young, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't. I told myself I will find a way to make it work. And so I turned to hustling and selling stuff on the streets of Johannesburg to put food on the table, you know, or selling whatever I could sell. Sometimes perfume, sometimes secondhand clothing. And that was in 2017. And I met a lot of people on the street who told me they have been, you know, hustling on the streets, some for 5 years, some 10 years, some 15 years, some even 20 years. And hearing these stories terrified me to the core. I didn't want to end up like that. I didn't want to be on the street for 5 years. You know, these people had no dreams. They were quite satisfied with their daily bread and whatever they got from the street. But I, on the other hand, I wanted more out of life. And so when the street started to swallow me, like swallow my energy and my time, and I saw myself moving further and further from the dream, I left. I gave up hustling on the streets, and I made a decision to learn how to design African jewelries, beaded jewelries, and I was selling my craft on Facebook and other platforms. You know, working from home gave me the opportunity to focus on the book. And as much as I was trying my best to put a roof, you know, to keep a roof over my head and put food on the table, the income wasn't nearly enough to cover the basis, you know. And I will forever be grateful for the support I had from family at the time. I had support from amazing friends and even food parcels from our church. They kept me and the kids going, and most importantly, they kept the dream alive. But still, it wasn't enough. I was living on a shoestring budget. I don't mean those thick shoestrings. I'm talking about the tiny shoestring whereby if you are not super gentle with it, it just breaks. You know, that's the kind of shoestring budget I'm talking about. Things were so bad that at one point, I remember going back to the couple that had offered me space in their home and asking, hey, is that offer still open for me and the kids to move in? And they were like, yeah. Though they said yes, I still couldn't move in with them. Among other reasons, I was afraid I would lose my drive if I suddenly didn't have to worry about paying rent or buying food, you know, and stuff like that. So I said no. And things undergot worse, you know. There was a time I was, you know, I was walking for about an hour every day to go and keep my daughter in school because her school was far and I couldn't afford school transport. And I did this for like 8 months, you know, walking every single day for about an hour. I walk an hour to go to her school and then another hour to come back. And I remember some of the ideas from the book came during these long hours of walking. And this was back in 2018. And there were times I would literally sit on the side of the road to write down stuff, ideas that came. And then I would later on develop them, you know, when I'm on my laptop. I always had a notebook with me. The process of me writing the book and finding my path and finding my purpose has been so hard. I mean, it was so hard. But I told myself that there are only two options. It's either I win or I win. I couldn't afford even internet at home at the time. And I would seek out all the free Wi-Fi spots around town to do my research. I had a very old laptop that couldn't even connect directly to Wi-Fi. And so I had a small phone that wasn't so smart, but it was something. But at least, you know, it connected to Wi-Fi where I did my research and I would type out what was relevant on my laptop from the tiny screen on the phone. And this is exactly the phone, you know. It's no longer working, but I keep it for sentimental reasons. There were days I had no idea where the next meal would come from. There were days I had to use a tea bag twice, just to make sure that the kids had tea, I vividly remember being invited to bring the kids for a friend's birthday party, whose child was also having a party, something like that. And my daughter was about 5 years at the time. We got there and there was so much food, so much chicken, so much meat. And my daughter literally started shouting, "Mommy, see meat!" When she said "see meat," I literally had to put my hand on her mouth, to shut her up, because I was like, "No, baby." Because she wasn't used to seeing such delicacies and seeing so much meat at a go. Meat was like something we saw on TV. And that in itself is a story for another day, And this in itself is like a story within a story. My life has been so rough and so tough that if I were to pour everything out, some of you would think that I'm reciting a movie script or something. But my point is that it took a lot of resilience and persistence to get to where I am today. The struggle landed me in hospital at some point due to high level of stress, but still giving up was not an option, even though I was in that hospital for like a week. But giving up was not an option. I was broke both financially and emotionally, but I never took my eyes off the dream of what I wanted to accomplish. The story of how I actually published the book, it's a story for another day. Some people look at me today and they say my story is inspiring, but the truth is that I didn't know exactly what I was doing. I think I took a huge chance on life, and somehow I figured it out. Somehow the dots connected as I kept pushing myself and pushing my own boundaries. Somehow God came through for me. This is grace. Because back in 2016, I didn't realize it then, but when I lost my job, I also won something. I won an opportunity to stretch myself and to see what else was out there. I won an opportunity to dream bigger, and take bigger actions. I won an opportunity to make a difference in the world. If I'd stayed, I would still be a PA. I would still be in admin, nothing much, but trouble sometimes doesn't need an invitation. Tough times are inevitable, but being defeated by them is optional. Napoleon Hill said something. Every adversity, every failure, and every heartache carries with it the seed of an equivalent or a greater benefit. And so, looking in hindsight, getting retrenched was actually a blessing in disguise for me. I was released and set free to find something better, and I did. The very fact that you're listening to me now, or maybe you have read my book, is proof that there is beauty in chaos. Dealing with nearly insurmountable challenges can sometimes turn out to be the best thing that ever happened to you, as was the case for me, because I stood for what I believed in, and I've had some recognitions along the way. I was recognized by Thinkers 360 as one of the top global thought leaders and influencers on digital disruption and the future of work for 2019 and 2020 respectively. But the journey continues. My life isn't void of struggles or pain or heartache or disappointment or tears, but the truth is that I've grown as a person. I'm no longer the person I used to be, and best of it, I found my purpose. Though I am not where I want to be, but I am not where I used to be. And my message in this video is that whatever you're going through, embrace whatever life throws at you. Don't run away. Fight to change the trajectory of your life. Fight to turn your wounds into wisdom. Fight to turn disappointment into opportunity. you know, don't run away from pain. More often than not, more often than not, a bestseller or a best business model or an award-winning song are usually born out of deep adversity or out of an economic crisis like the one we are facing right now. So you can take the pain, the frustration, the skills, you know, the experience, whatever that is inside of you, you can take all of that and package it into something that will solve a problem for other people, and you can get paid for it. You know, in my case, it became the book. And I hope that you found some sort of hope, you know, in my story. I am deeply grateful to everyone who has been part of this journey, of my journey. I never could have done this on my own. I am so grateful to every one of you that have supported me along the way. And if you are interested in understanding how to position yourself for change, you know, for the new normal, for the new economy, then get a copy of my book, Disrupt Yourself or Be Disrupted. It's available on Amazon in both Kindle and the paper version. You can search for it by typing my name, Nicky Verd, or by the title of the book. You know, I'll share the link on the description below. And for those of you that are in South Africa, and for those of you that are within South Africa, you can get the book at either Exclusive Books or Bargain Books nationwide. If this video has been valuable to you, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share the video with someone who may benefit from this. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on my next video. Hey, before you go, here's something, you know, here's what others are saying about my book.